The blind and the lame came to him at the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the teachers of the law saw the wonderful things he did, and the children shouting in the temple courts, "Hosanna to the Son of David," they were indignant. "Do you hear what these children are saying?" they asked Jesus. He replied, "Yes. Have you never read? From the lips of children and infants, you, Lord, have called forth your praise." And he left them and went out of the city to Bethany, where he spent the night. I always thought, this is kind of Jesus' travel plans, right? We know where he's going and where he's spending the night. Anyway, you're not with me on that humor, huh? So I've entitled our the next series coming into Easter, Doorways to God Consciousness. And it's a journey of our souls overcoming. Every one of us who've walked through a tragic or a difficult circumstance and come out at the other end has made that overcoming journey that is symbolized by Easter and the time leading up to Easter. Easter is my favorite spiritual holiday because it offers so much transformational power. Right now on the planet, there's a vibration of rising up and overcoming and getting through difficulty. It's a journey of our souls overcoming, and it's depicted in the story of the final journey that Jesus made when he rode into Jerusalem and began that final week of his life, when he knew the way that things were supposed to go. Like it said in our reading, let's see, what did it say? Well, I saw it here. It's written, "My house will be called a house of prayer, but you're making it a den of robbers." Jesus entered the temple courts and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. "It is written," he said to them, "my house will be called a house of prayer." So he's quoting scripture, and he's understanding how his journey is going to go, and he's stepping into that with a full realization. In the final weeks of his life, it's really important to study his teachings because he's developing his own consciousness of the universal Christ to make the overcoming, to make the resurrection. So I like to look at what is he doing all in this journey. What is he doing to take him into full resurrection, into the divine? Because it's something for all of us. Every time we've made an overcoming, we've journeyed through all of those steps you'll see in the coming weeks, doorways to God's consciousness. So I want to share with you today about the Lenten season. The time leading up to Easter is a time of spiritual rebirth and renewal. It's a realigning with the Christ self of us, and it's an opportunity to be transformed at depth. I've had several experiences in my life that have all seemed to come in the spring of the year. I can remember when I received the diagnosis that I needed open heart surgery and to go into that surgery immediately without any forewarning. That was spring, and I came out of that resurrecting into new life in Easter. I remember one time when my husband told me he wanted a divorce. And that was right coming into Easter, and I had to learn the resurrecting power of coming through the pain and the suffering, the hurt, and the loss of a divorce that I didn't want. And another time, different husband was sick. We waited 2 years for a heart and lung transplant for him, which never came. And so he died just before Easter. So coming into the resurrection of that loss over someone that you've worked in cooperation with for healing for years, teaches you how to journey through teaches you, if you allow it, all the steps of overcoming come to you. They're so vital. What Jesus did in this final week of his life is so vital to understanding how we meet the deep experiences of our life. I don't say all that stuff happened to me to say, look at me, but I'm saying all that stuff happened to me to make me a better minister and to teach me how to help you meet the challenges of your life and to come into that overcoming, rising up into that power. This week is Ash Wednesday, which signals the beginning of Lent. It's 46 days until Easter, which is marked by 40 weekdays and 6 Sundays. Some fast facts about Lent. Many spiritual traditions observe it as a time of giving up something, fasting to be closer to God. Some give up smoking, Some give up sugar, some give up alcohol, some give up chocolate. I was the first part of my life, early years, I was raised Catholic. I remember giving up chocolate for Lent as a young girl. I wasn't very successful at it, but anyway. Some people concentrate their attention on sacrifice and self-denial. In Unity, we fast from negative thinking. I think I have a slide for this. We fast from negative thinking and thought patterns that are life-defeating rather than life-affirming. I have a slide for that, please. So it's about fasting from negative thinking. Lent is not giving up something good, but unleashing, taking a behavior or a life-affirming thought that unleashes more of the full God potential within us. It's removing the thoughts, the habits, and the behaviors. Hello, sound techs. AV. Slides, please. Oh, they're working on it. Okay, thank you. They're working on it. Somehow, something I sent in my thing. Okay, when you fast from negativity, what happens is you step into and begin to live more fully from the God. When you step out of negativity, you begin to live more fully in alignment with the Christ self of you, and all goodness takes place. This Lenten season, I want to invite you to consider what in your consciousness you want to change or eliminate completely. Change or eliminate completely so that you can live closer to the truth of your most authentic self, of your God self. How does that happen? Fast from negative thinking and thought patterns that are life-defeating. And the next slide says, Lent's not about giving up the good, but rising up into more of the goodness that you already are, recognizing the wholeness and the truth that you live in moment by moment, that you're sourcing moment by moment. Is there a way of being that's been crucifying you for years maybe? And now's the time to rise above it. In your bulletin this week, I put a list of 25 ways to fast from negative thinking, and then the opposite, fast from this and feast on that. And next week I'll kick off, I have a little paragraph each week and a homework assignment we can do to fast from anger and feast on love, to fast from loss and feast on restoration, to fast from regret and feast on forgiveness. We'll take one of those each week through the Lenten season so that we can train our minds to live more fully aligned to those spiritual truths that live inside of us. You've heard me tell the story of Cindy, who was a woman, adult woman, who couldn't keep a secret. As a little girl, when she did it, it was cute, right? Because there wasn't any information she had that was potentially harmful if she blurted something out, right? But in her workplace as an adult, she found it hard to keep information confidential about new projects or things that were going on in the workplace that were not yet ready for release of information. And in her family, as you can imagine, several of her friends and family felt hurt when she blurted out sensitive information about their marriages or their personal problems or their illnesses. Most of the circle of her friends had long ago stopped trusting her and confiding in her. They labeled her as untrustworthy, and she felt lonely and isolated from her family because she was never in the loop about what was going on in her family, because they all just kind of shut her out because she didn't have the ability to keep confidentiality. So one day at a family gathering, you've been there, you know, you all sit down at the table, all the family are there and a few guests. The dad is at the head of the table, and the dad speaks out and he says, "So Cindy, tell me about so-and-so," and it was some juicy piece of gossip that was circulating around in the environment. And he says, "So Cindy, tell me of what's happening with so-and-so." And she said, like clockwork, all the people at the table turned to where she was sitting and looked at her in dead silence. And she said, in that silence, in that moment of silence, there was an overwhelming realization and realization that she got for the first time. She'd never been able to see it in herself, but in that moment she saw that her family considered her a gossip, unable to keep confidences. And so that her dad's looking down the table at her, staring at her, and she said how she replied was just, she said it was like an out-of-body experience. I can't even believe the words that came out of my mouth. But she said, I told my father, I said out loud at the table, "Dad, that's not my story to tell." That's not my story to tell. And she said in that moment, it was transformational for her. She had a chemicalization, a feeling in her body, in her physiology of her body, that there was a remaking of something in her soul. And she, and she said everybody at the table just kind of sat back and went on eating their turkey and gravy or whatever, and it was as if nothing had happened. But she declared for herself a new way of being, a new way of living and interacting with her family. She said she felt frozen in time and realized her family had considered her a gossip and untrustworthy, and she'd never seen herself that way, but she experienced a chemicalization in her spirit. The words that came out of her mouth surprised her as much as anyone when she said, "You know, Dad, that's not my story to tell." And she went on to remake herself as a person who could and would keep information confidential. So, how do we rise up above ways of being, some that are deeply ingrained in us, some that were learned in childhood? Oh, that's so cute, how she doesn't keep a secret. Isn't that adorable? How do we rise above all that stuff? How do we fast from bad habits and ways of being and mistakes and regrets until they die out of us or we resurrect above them? How do we do that? In Scripture, in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24, it says, "If anyone wants to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Now, that's an interesting scripture because in Unity, we don't have any crucifixes hanging around here. We don't talk about the cross very much at all, usually. But in Unity, the cross signifies just what the word means. The crossing out, the elimination and the total and complete crossing out of the negative so that the positive can come forth. We cross out the lesser self so we're free to follow the God self of us. Cross out any part of us that's less than and step fully into the universal Christ consciousness that we are. The negative part of us will say, "Come my way." That's usually the cry of the negative. We say, "Come with me God's way." Come with me God's way. I think I have that on a slide. It's an invitation from the Spirit of you, from the Christ of God in you, to follow your most authentic self. You know, and you know in the parts of you that know, when you're standing in the truth, when you're living in the truth of your whole being, the truth of God. What does it say here? Give up. When you give up erroneous thinking, you're not losing anything. You get rid of what holds you back or keep you stuck. In Unity, erroneous and error thinking, E-R-R-O-R, error thinking, was a big word during the Fillmore's time. Everything was error consciousness, error thinking, meaning negative thinking. Thoughts that are life negating rather than life affirming. And we want to work to change the errors in consciousness, the way we hold beliefs and habits in consciousness, and rise above them, lift up into the wholeness of God that we are. If anyone wants to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Deny the negative, life-negating parts of yourself and cross out anything that gets in the way of that and follow the Christ spirit of your being. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, he wasn't running away from anything. He was going towards something. In lots of reading that you do on that week that changed the world, they call it, they say he was fully aware of the path that he was on and that he wasn't running away from anything. He was marching forward into the final presentation of his life, the final teachings of his life. Lent offers an opportunity to set aside the personal so we can set an intention to follow our own indwelling spirit. So what in you during this season wants to rise up into something more? Have you had moments like Cindy when you catch a glimpse of who in truth you know yourself to be rather than how you're showing up? Right? I had an experience yesterday. I got an email from one of my former congregants in Nashville. Her father passed in January, and she wrote and asked if I would consider recording a video message to play at his celebration of life service. And then she ended her email by saying, "Just like President Obama is my forever president, you are my forever minister." Yeah, I know. It just choked me up. And I thought, am I showing up that way? Am I showing up as somebody's forever minister, somebody's spiritual leader or pastor? And it was a real thoughtful time last evening after I read her email. I just thought, wow, I mean, do I live that way? Am I showing up? Have you had moments when you catch a glimpse of, in truth, who you know yourself to be rather than how you're showing up? There was a moment of catching a glimpse of how others view me, and I had a chance to say, am I living that way? Am I living from that essence? Cindy, in our story, recognized the shortcoming in herself, and rather than beat herself up about it, saying, well, that's just the way I am, that's the way I've always been, she did something about it. That day, at her family gathering, was a turning point for her, a beginning of a whole new way of living for her. It's one that expanded her into integrity, faith, trust, and love. Now, when you make a declaration to do something, I always say, Spirit's going to pass it back around you one more time, just to see, the after test. Are you really standing in the strength of that? All you have to do is give up chocolate or alcohol or whatever. My brother, when he stopped drinking, met a friend in Louisville, Kentucky for the Kentucky Derby. And his wife, the friend's wife, owned half of Louisville. So they were invited to all the grand parties with all the who's who of America that comes to that stuff. And my brother said he found himself, they all went out to the dance floor, and he found himself sitting at this big round table that probably had 80 drinks on it. And he'd stopped drinking the week before, And I think the Spirit has a way of saying, here you go, you said you wanted this. Is it in the confirmation of your soul? It doesn't matter if you say, I'm going to eat less or eat more healthy or give up chocolate or stop criticizing, whatever it is, Spirit's going to plunk something. Oftentimes, I feel, Spirit plunks something down in our life that says, well, you said you wanted this. Let's see how you're doing. And you'll pass the test. You may not pass it the first time, but be assured Spirit will keep passing it around until you can say, that's not the way I am anymore. I used to not be able to keep confidence, as Cindy said, but that's not the truth of who I am anymore. When we give up what Unity calls erroneous thinking, negative thinking, we're not losing anything. We're merely getting rid of something that holds us back and keeps us stuck. If a person has a tendency to gossip or to say ugly things about another, letting go of that habit is a good practice. It's giving up and rising up. There is a spiritual principle in unity, a spiritual principle of renunciation, renouncing that which you no longer want in your life. We deny what we do not want in our life, and we affirm what we do want. I think we have it up here. Yeah, you deny what you don't want in your life, affirm what you do want. Denials and affirmations are the spiritual tools of fasting and prayer. Denial is fasting from something, and prayer is affirming something. Sometimes you have to let things go so there's room for better things to come into your life. We know that to be true. So about any overcoming you want to make, I like to say, fasting and prayer will get me there. I want to give you some little mantras you can say if you make a decision during this Lenten season to work with overcoming something. You can say, fasting and prayer will take me there. Fasting is fasting from the negative, and prayer is affirming what you want to see for your life. If you have a bad temper, Lent is a time to retrain your impulse to fly off the handle. If you have a tendency to criticize, Lent is a good time to give up fault finding and to live more in a spirit of acceptance. Oh, that's just how things are. We can affirm, I restrain to attain, or I retrain to attain. I give up so I can rise up. That's what we're going to be working on for 40 days and 6 Sundays. Let's affirm it together. I restrain to attain. I retrain to attain. I give up so I can rise up. In consciousness, right? Denial of the personal self brings us into greater unity with the divine self. Denial, retraining the lesser, restraining from the lesser stuff and retraining ourselves from the lesser stuff lets us rise up. Lent is not about giving up, but about rising up into more of the goodness of who you truly are. So no matter your faith tradition, Lent can be a season of great personal transformation. It offers an opportunity for cleansing and disciplining both our minds and our hearts and our bodies toward the end of making them more receptive to the Spirit of God. It's a cleansing, it's a letting go, it's a denial practice that cleanses out our minds and hearts so that we walk more fully in the goodness of God. You have a handout in your bulletin with suggestions for fasting. You can choose to fast from something for the next 40 days and use the feast that's there. I fast from this and I feast on that. Or you can choose something that you decide on your own. Easter is April 20th. So whatever it is in your life right now, you want to give it over to Spirit and expect a definite overcoming. Expectation of good is a big part of our prayer work. Day after day, as you steadily adhere to the resolve of I fast from this and I feast on that, you strengthen and expand your understanding. Your error will teach you if you let it. Just like Cindy, her gossiping taught her greater integrity. Her lack of confidentiality had her step into greater truth of who she is. When you blend your mind with divine mind in prayer, the way will be open for immeasurable power and love and success for you as you work on this fasting and feasting. So I invite you to choose one of the suggestions listed in your handout or decide on your own so that you unleash more of the God potential within you. Ask yourself, how could I live more fully from the truth of who I am in God? And then let that in prayer, let that awareness come to you. Is there anything I need to give up or be less of and be more of in order to live more fully the Christ spirit of my nature? Last slide, I want us to affirm together. I give up so I can rise up. I restrain so I can attain. Fasting and prayer will take me there. I'd like to invite you to take those home and memorize those as you're working through this next 40-day Lenten period. Let's affirm them together as we close. I give up so I can rise up. I restrain so I can attain. Fasting and prayer will take me there. When you walk over to the refrigerator and you open it up, I restrain so I can attain. Fasting and prayer will take me there. And you shut that door and you have 8 ounces of natural water instead, right? There you go. All right, let's take that into prayer this morning. I give up so I can rise up. I retrain to attain. I restrain so I can attain. So take a deep breath in and let your mind be still. Let your heart have full magnificence in your body. Let it radiate love throughout your system. Let the breath of Spirit in you enliven every organ, action, and function and system, so your body is filled and thrilled with healing life. Jesus said, "It is written, my house will be called a house of prayer." My house, the temple of my being, my consciousness, is a place of prayer. And there the blind and the lame came to him, and he healed them all. Our blind spots, the places where we limp along, feel lame. I give up so I can rise up. Let's affirm that again together. I give up so I can rise up. This morning we know and believe in the healing, renewing life of God. If you're ever tempted to say to yourself that some situation looks impossible, this is the place, this is the moment to turn your thinking around, to fast from the negative and feast on the positive. Right now, if there's some situation in your life, you envision the light of truth around you. You are God's creation, blessed with love to heal every inharmony, blessed with strength, blessed with security and safety. There is a wealth of good in your life. There is a wealth of good in you. So as we fast this week in prayer, I invite you to release all the people and all the situations into God's care. I love a visualization I hold in my own heart. I see myself walking forward to an altar, and there I place any concern or care on the altar to let God alter it. Don't let yourself be consumed by negativity or sadness or confusion. You know and believe. And we take this whole community of believers here. We know and believe in the healing, renewing life of God. And so you release any hurt or frustration into God's care, allowing any negative feelings to peacefully drift away. And you know, as we sang in the music this morning, you know in ways that may not be apparent, but right now the solution for you is being brought into the light. I know and believe in the healing, renewing power of God. I know and believe in the healing, renewing power of God. Together, I know and believe in the healing, renewing power of God. Now let yourself feel God's presence embracing you with love, surrounding you. Let divine love flow through you. Let fresh perspectives come. In these moments of quiet prayer, you can feel the assurance that you are not alone, that your heart is comforted and filled with new hope. I know and believe in the healing power of God. We let our minds and hearts turn to others, to those we love, our family and friends, our nation, our world. Prayers for our ministry. Anyone you especially wish to bless this morning, I invite you to speak their name silently. We embrace all those who have asked for prayer from this ministry, all the names in our prayer chest. And we speak a word for those people. You release any hurt or frustration into God's care. The healing, renewing power of God is mightily at work in you and in your life. And the Gospel of John reminds us, we have known and believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. I am fasting from negativity and feasting on God. I know and believe in the healing, renewing power of God. And so it is. Let it be so. Together we all say, Amen.